There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. In case you didn't hear, Riley Gaul was found guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of stalking, but not aggravated stalking, guilty of theft of property, guilty of interference with government operations and hiding evidence. We know that he already pled guilty to reckless endangerment. He was found guilty of possessing a firearm during a dangerous felony, and that felony was stalking, and guilty of killing during aggravated child abuse, which is the felony murder rule. Guilty across the board, and he was already sentenced immediately, and he faces life in prison. That's what his sentence is, life in prison, but with the possibility of parole. Let's talk a little bit about it more with our guest right now, criminal defense attorney Gary Gerstenfield. Gary, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Jesse.
What do you think about the verdict here? Guilty across the board. Were you surprised?
No. The case for the state was very, very strong. Right from the very beginning, the defense acknowledged critical pieces of evidence or critical facts rather that the state would have to make. Number one, that Mr. Gaul actually did do the shooting, and the facts of the case are problematic for the defense right from the very beginning. You've got conflicting stories from Riley. He has this recorded conversation with his friends that he, of course, is unaware of. It was secretly recorded. In that recorded conversation, he's very calmly talking about the facts of the case and sort of spinning a story. It's a lie to his friends. And that lie doesn't match up to the defense's argument in the case itself, which was this was an intention to try to win back his girlfriend and try to show that he could be the hero. And so this incompatibility right from the very beginning is a real turnoff to the jury. It was 8 men, 4 women, I believe, made up the jury. And this is a relatively quick verdict. And it's an unfortunate situation for the defense. Sometimes you just have bad facts, and that's unfortunately what his legal team had.
This case, I believe, ended for the defense when that evidence came out that he was 4 to 5 feet, Mr. Gaul was 4 to 5 feet away from her bedroom window when he fired those shots, and the 2 shots were parallel to the side of the bed and the headboard, indicating that he was aiming for her. When he could have fired in the air, he could have fired in the ground, and the excuse that he didn't know what a gun did and he didn't know that bullets can go through a wall, I'm pretty sure that the case fell apart for the defense at that point. Now, Gary, I want you to stand by, because we could talk about Gaul, but we really wanted to focus on Willis today, the Jeffery Willis case. So stand by. What we're going to do right now, again, our main focus for the day will be talking about the Jeffery Willis case out of Michigan. Now, again, this is this convicted murderer and accused predator of women who is on trial for the kidnapping and murder of a gas station clerk named Jessica Heeringa, who went missing back in 2013. Her body has never been found. We have a short report talking a little bit more about this case, and then we'll come back and talk about it in a minute. Take a look.
The trial of convicted serial killer Jeffery Willis is scheduled to begin this week. Willis, who was convicted in late 2017 for the 2014 murder of Rebecca Bletch, is accused of the kidnapping and murder of Jessica Heeringa. Willis was arrested in connection with the Bletch and Heeringa murders after a teenage girl who escaped her abductor identified Willis as her captor. Police later searched his home and van and charged him with the unsolved murders. Prosecutors contend Willis schemed to abduct women so he could rape, torture, and murder them. Willis is currently serving a life sentence for the Bletch murder and is awaiting trial for the abduction of a teenage girl. For Law and Crime, I'm Rachel Stockman.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. That is the case we're covering here on the Law and Crime Network and Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. It is the Jeffery Willis case, a bizarre series of events for this man out of Michigan. Let's talk a little bit more about it. Again, I'm here with criminal defense attorney Gary Gerstenfield. Now, this is an interesting case, okay, Gary, because you got 3 separate events for this guy. He's already been convicted in the murder, the shooting death of Rebecca Bletch. After this current Jessica Heeringa case, which again, we are going to be live in, after this one, he's going to be on trial for potentially abducting a teenage girl. So how, if you can explain real quick, how do these 3 events tie in together, and how does it matter in this case?
Well, in terms of punishment, I'm not sure that it really does. I mean, you know, in the old days in the Navy, and particularly the British Navy, they would whip a sailor, and sometimes they would whip the sailor, for serious misconduct, every ship of the line. these were the battleships, would take the sailor and whip them. By the time they got to the third or fourth ship, the sailor was probably dead. So why keep doing these trials when for the sentence this guy's already got is one where why are we adding on more time? And the reason why is because we want to give closure to victims' families. We want to make sure that there is accountability. And so for the purpose of accountability and for the purpose of closure, it's important to pursue these cases.
Right. I mean, he's already serving a life sentence for the shooting death of Rebecca Bletch. And again, this guy, he has been throughout Michigan. He's known as a predator of women. I mean, yesterday came out evidence that, which we've kind of saw in the Rebecca Bletch trial, that he had a rape kit found in his van. We heard the testimony of this young teenage girl who said that she was almost abducted by him. So you saw a lot of evidence that we already saw in the Rebecca Bletch trial. We'll talk more about it today. We're going to wait for our live coverage. This is the Jeffery Willis case. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case you don't want to miss. This is about a serious individual, and these are serious crimes that you don't want to miss. So we'll be back. We'll talk about this in a second. But before we do, we have a short report about the top news stories of the day. I want to play that for you right now here on Law and Crime and Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. Take a look.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on lawandcrime.com and across the country. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman resigned after The New Yorker published a bombshell report alleging he physically abused 4 women he had previous relationships with. The Manhattan DA plans to investigate the former AG. Schneiderman denies all wrongdoing, claiming the purported abuse was actually role-playing during consensual sex, and denied abuse claims. George Zimmerman is back in the news again after he was charged with 1 count of aggravated stalking in Florida. Zimmerman, who rose to infamy for the shooting and killing of an unarmed teen, Trayvon Martin, in 2012, allegedly sent threatening messages to a private investigator. According to authorities, the investigator was hired by a production company which is producing a documentary on the Martin killing. Lastly, the hacker who stole Paris Hilton's nude photos and more than 120 grand from her bank account was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Hilton testified at the trial of the hacker and asked the judge to sentence her to more than 30 months in prison. The hacker accessed 2 of Hilton's email accounts in 2016 to obtain the nudes and credit card information. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Rachel Stockman for Law and Crime.
That was our very own Rachel Stockman giving a breakdown of some of the top legal stories of the day. You can go to lawandcrime.com to learn a little bit more about them. But again, I want to focus back on the Jeffery Willis case. That is our main trial for the day. Again, I'm here with criminal defense attorney Gary Gerstenfield. Now, in this case, in this saga, one of the big players is a man named Kevin Blum. He is Jeffery Willis's cousin. How does he tie into the Jessica Heeringa disappearance and murder?
Well, he's a fact witness in the case. He has information that he can provide. And how does it ultimately factor into it? In many ways. Number one, we're looking for is we're trying to take a camera, if you will, go back in time and see what happened. And we're looking for people that can provide that information.
Yeah, but he's the person who said that he helped get rid of the body. And he was trying to lead investigators to that body, but there was no body. So the body's still never been found. And now he's out, right? He's out. He's not in prison anymore. He served, time served, he's out. But he's a critical character in this case. Do you think he's going to testify in the Jessica Heeringa case?
Well, yes, I think he will. I don't think he's going to have a choice on that. The question is how valuable is the information he's going to provide? I mean, number one, he's what we call damaged goods. His credibility is an easy target for the defense. And the fact of the matter is, when he had the opportunity to show up, he didn't exactly do that. Show us where the body is, and they came up with nothing.
Yeah. Well, Kevin Blum, remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you're following the Jeffery Willis case here on Law and Crime, Kevin Blum is a name you want to remember because Jeffery Willis's team will most likely try to point the finger at him. They tried to do it in the past, saying that he's the one that killed Jessica Heeringa, that he's the one who's responsible for these crimes. And for anybody who's been following the Jeffery Willis saga, Mr. Willis has never accepted responsibility for anything. He denies trying to kidnap that teenage girl. He denies killing Rebecca Bletch, and he certainly denies having anything to do with the disappearance or murder of Jessica Heeringa. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. When we come back, We have a lot to discuss here on Law and Crime. We'll be back in a minute. That's the prosecution's opening statement in the Jeffery Willis case out of Michigan. Hi, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber. You're watching Law and Crime and listening to Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. The Jeffery Willis case out of Michigan is our main focus, that we are going to be live in that courtroom. This case. Again, it's about this already convicted murderer and accused predator of women who's on trial for the kidnapping and murder of a gas station clerk named Jessica Heeringa, who went missing back in 2013, and her body has never been found. During the prosecution's opening statement, what you just heard was about this potential abduction. Remember, Mr. Willis, after this trial, will probably stand trial for the 2016 kidnapping of a teenager who escaped his van and went to police. And that's what the prosecutor right there was talking about. Because all of these events, they say, are connected to show what kind of man he is and what he is up to, that he is a predator of women. Now, this teenager, Madison Nygaard, who has been identified, she wanted to be identified, she testified yesterday in court on the first day of the Jessica Heeringa case. Now, let's talk a little bit about more where we are right now. Again, I'm here with criminal defense attorney Gary Gerstenfield. So let's talk a little bit about what came out into evidence yesterday besides the testimony of Madison. They said that they found in Willis's van there was a gun that had a laser sight that matched a battery cover found outside of the gas station where Jessica was abducted. They also said they found a folder at Willis's house that was labeled VIX, which is short for victims, and there were images of Heeringa on there. A search of his van found what looked like a rape kit, and there was everything from a ball gag, sex toys, rope, leather gloves, handcuffs. Now, I know Mr. Willis has tried to explain all of this away in the past, but what did you make of it, Gary?
Well, he is the definition of a monster. And so, this is a guy who, he is an absolute predator, and he's a predator of opportunity. And frankly, probably one of the most dangerous type of predators we have, because this is a guy who looks for opportunity. He doesn't need to know who his victims are. He just goes out. For example, with Madison Nygaard, here's a kid. She's 16 years old. She's been drinking. I think she's been smoking some marijuana. So she's, she doesn't have a phone. She's a vulnerable person at this point. This is a perfect victim for what this guy is looking for. And it feeds right into the prosecution's case, which is that this guy truly is a monster. And look what he's got in his van. Look at all these things that he has. I mean, this is a guy who's clearly a calculating, clear man of absolute intensity of exactly what he wants to do, which is abduct, sexually assault, and murder his victims, and take tremendous pleasure in it.
Well, let's play some devil's advocate. Willis says, look, I just wanted to give a ride to a young girl. She looked distraught. In fact, when I picked her up, she looked like she was on meth. So I wanted to roll down the windows. When I rolled up the windows, the van locked. It wasn't like I was trying to lock her in there. And in terms of all the sex toys and everything you found, look, I had a sexually repressed marriage. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this man was married. And he said, look, that the marriage kind of was going downhill. The sex life was going downhill. Porn was my outlet. Is there any way this might be, a jury might say, maybe.
Well, no, and let's look at
no.
Let's look at who Madison Nygaard is. First of all, there's immediate reporting, and she escapes, and she's very clear about what happened. She's very clear about the fact that he told her that she could use a cell phone, but then she has to get in the car or get into the van with him. That's all part of the plan. Then the van takes off and the cell phone doesn't work. And then, of course, she says he points a gun at her. Juries are listening to this evidence, they're listening to this testimony, and they're looking at the credibility of the witness. This individual has no reason to lie. The testimony is very clear. She's not trying to keep her name, for example, a secret. She wants this story to get out. She's very clear and she's very precise in her testimony. And this is critical for the prosecution in making their case because, again, they're building a story. And the stronger your bricks, as you build a house, the stronger your bricks, the better the building. This is an excellent witness for the state, a very strong, compelling story, and not something that Mr. Willis is going to be able to, like the story of the wolf blows and you can't blow down brick. Well, that's exactly what Mr. Willis is going to find out.
Well, it's up to his defense attorneys to do it. I mean, everybody has a constitutional right to a defense, but it's a tough one. It's a tough one nonetheless. Gary, stand by. What we're going to do is we're going to continue playing some more of the prosecution's openings from yesterday. Again, this is the Jeffery Willis case, a man who is on trial for the abduction and murder of Jessica Heeringa, a gas station clerk who went missing back in 2013. Let's understand a little bit more about this case and where the prosecution is going. This is their opening statement from yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a quick break in the courtroom right now. So again, we are covering the Jeffery Willis case out of Michigan. You are listening and watching to Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. I'm Jesse Weber. So this is the Jeffery Willis case. Again, a man who's on trial for the kidnapping and murder of Jessica Heeringa, who went missing back in 2013. There are a lot of moving parts in this case because Mr. Willis has been accused and convicted of other crimes. He has been convicted in the shooting of Rebecca Bletch. She died in 2014. Mr. Willis is already serving a life sentence in connection with her death. And after this trial, the trial that you're listening to, the Jessica Heeringa case, Mr. Willis is expected to stand trial in the 2016 kidnapping of a teenager who escaped his van and went to police. So during the course of this trial, you're going to hear it's almost 3 different cases in one. I know it's unique, but what the prosecution is saying is that this is a pattern of abuse. This is a pattern of a predator. I'm hoping that we still have with us right now criminal defense attorney Gary Gerstenfield. Gary, are you with us?
I sure am, Jess.
Great. So we're learning a little bit more about the Rebecca Bletch murder, which was interesting because it is tied into the Jessica Heeringa case. My question to you is, what's the defense here? Is the defense saying, look, we're going to show you a little bit more about Jessica Heeringa. She had a tumultuous life with heroin use. You can't trust a lot of these witnesses. She's not the victim that everybody's saying. Is that what the defense is trying to say here?
Well, a defense in a case like this is sort of a fluid affair. What you're trying to do is you're looking for any opportunity, any potential crack that you can try to make some sort of make something.
Oh, I think we just lost our feed right there, ladies and gentlemen. So stand by. We're going to figure out what's happening. But again, don't worry. We are covering the Jeffery Willis case here on Law and Crime. Again, for anybody just joining us, this is about that convicted murderer and accused predator of women who is on trial for the kidnapping and murder of a gas station clerk named Jessica Heeringa, who went missing back in 2013. Now, her body has never been found. So yesterday we saw the opening statements in this case. We saw some explosive testimony, some huge testimony, including, I'm getting word, do we have any courtroom feed? No, I think we still don't have the feed yet. As soon we'll let you know in a minute. Yesterday was opening statements, and that's what I want to play for you right now. We had the opening statements from yesterday by the prosecution, and I know this case can get a little complicated because we're talking about 3 different cases in one. So the prosecution did a really good job of explaining how all of these different events are tied into Jeffery Willis and tied into the disappearance and murder of Jessica Heeringa. Again, this is a continuation of the prosecution's opening statement from yesterday. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome back to the Law and Crime Network and Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. We cover the most interesting live trials in the country right now, and we have one for you. We are live in the Jeffery Willis case out of Michigan. This convicted murderer who's on trial for allegedly kidnapping and murdering a gas station clerk named Jessica Heeringa, who went missing back in 2013. Her body has never been found. Now, what we've seen so far today has been the testimony of an insulin expert, because insulin is one of the things that was found in Jeffery Willis's van, along with what prosecutors are labeling a rape kit. Everything from sex toys, a ball gag, rope, a metal bar with leather restraints was found, and also insulin, as well as a diagram of a human figure with injection sites. Let's just talk really briefly about this more with my guest, criminal defense attorney Gary Gerstenfield. Gary, this insulin expert's on the stand talking about that insulin can be used to incapacitate somebody, and then not only on top of that, you have a diagram with injection sites of a body. I mean, how does the defense argue this away?
You know, sometimes you just get some tough cases and really bad facts, and I guess this probably counts as really bad facts. I think of interest, particularly to your viewers, is that the picture that the prosecutor was able to show of the insulin and the needles was right next to the gun and all the other stuff that's found in the van, and it just paints just this horrifying picture of what Madison Niger was potentially facing when she was able to get out of that van, and what was in store for her had she not been able to get out of the van. I mean, this guy is a clear and calculated individual, and clearly he was intent on doing some very bad things.
Gary, you make a good point. I just want to remind our viewers that this is a unique case in that it's almost like three separate trials are happening in one, because Jeffery Willis has already been convicted in the shooting death of Rebecca Bletch, a jogger. This happened back in 2014. After this current trial that we're covering, he's most likely going to stand potential kidnapping charges. It's alleged that he tried to kidnap a teenager back in 2016. You mentioned her. So everything's kind of connected to show this pattern of abuse. Now, one of the other interesting things that came out yesterday during evidence was a collection of toolbox killer information. It seemed that Mr. Willis was collecting information about other serial killers. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Well, this is a guy who's clearly got a plan, and his plan is to abduct, sexually assault, and then murder his victims. And he's fascinated by the fact that other people are doing this, and he's clearly somebody who's willing to explore and learn new ways of committing these crimes. So he's interested in how other people are doing it. He's following this sort of stuff, and it sort of adds into the prosecutor's argument that this guy is truly an evil person. And what's unique about his case, and I think, Jesse, you made an excellent point, is that there's sort of like three cases all in one. Typically, in your average, normal sort of criminal case, other crimes and other bad acts normally are excluded because of the prejudicial and unfairly prejudicial effect or impact they would have on a jury. Unfortunately for Mr. Willis, because of the fact that these three cases sort of all are necessary to combine, or are necessary to be combined together to point out to the jury exactly who this guy is and exactly what his plan and his modus operandi was, that it all gets to come in, it all gets presented. So the fact is that, again, adding to the woe of Mr. Willis's defense counsel, which I feel some sympathy for, not particularly for Mr. Willis, is the fact that you've got three different cases with compelling evidence against all three of them being applied to him.
It's a compelling case in all different ways. We're going to go live back into the Michigan courtroom. This is the Jeffery Willis case that we're covering here on Law and Crime. Let's go.